Euzubillahimineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi şrah li sadri ve yessir li emri ve hlul ukdeten min lisani yefkahu kavli. Selamun aleyküm ve rahmetullahi ve berekatuhu. Inshallah, we will start with the second station of the 22nd word. We finished the first station last week, and inshallah we will continue with the second station.
Okay, Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajim. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. The second station of the 22nd word, introduction. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate. God is the creator of all things. God is the creator of all things. And he is the guardian and disposer of all affairs. To him belong the keys of the heavens and the earth. To him belong the keys of the heavens and the earth. So glory to him in whose hands is the sovereignty of all things. And to him will you all be brought back. And there is not a thing, but its sources and treasures, inexhaustible, are with us. But we only send down thereof in due and ascertainable measures. There is not a moving creature, but he has grasp of its forelock. There is not a moving creature, but he, capital H, he has grasp of its forelock. Verily it is my sustainer that is on a straight path. So these are verses from the Quran. The footnotes says chapter 39, verse 62, 36, verse 83, chapter 15, verse 21, and chapter 11, verse 56. This is an interesting verse, actually, the last one. Verily, it is my sustainer that is on a straight path. Okay, so let's start with the introduction. In my treatise entitled Qatra, which is about belief in God, the principal pole of the pillars of belief, I explained in brief an evidence to Almighty God's existence and unity, given by all beings through 55 tongues. I explained in brief the evidence to Almighty God's existence and unity, given by all beings through 55 tongues. Also, in the treatise Nukta, I mentioned 4 universal proofs out of the evidences of Almighty God's existence and unity, each of which has the strength of 1,000 proofs. I mentioned 4 universal proofs out of the evidences of Almighty God's existence and unity, each of which has the strength of 1,000 proofs. Moreover, since I have discussed in around 12 of my Arabic treatises hundreds of decisive proofs demonstrating Almighty God's necessary existence and unity, I shall be content with those and not now undertake any profound investigations. Only I shall try to explain in this 22nd word 12 flashes from the sun of belief in God, which I have written briefly in other places in the Risale-i Nur. First flash. The affirmation of divine unity is of 2 sorts. The affirmation of divine unity is of 2 sorts. For example, if the goods of a rich man arrive in a market or a town, there are 2 ways in which one may know that they are his. For example, if the goods of a rich man arrive in a market or a town, there are 2 ways in which one may know that they are his. One is briefly and simply, as with ordinary people, which is, in quotes, no one apart from him is capable of owning this vast amount of goods, end quote. So that's one way, which he says is brief and simple with ordinary people. No one apart from him is capable of owning this vast amount of goods. But when under the supervision of a common man, such as that, much of it may be stolen. Many others may claim ownership of parts of it. The second sort is this: through reading his writing on every packet, recognizing his signature on every roll, and seeing his seal on every bill, the man declares, everything belongs to that person. Here, everything in effect shows the important man. So everything belongs to that person. That's the other way. Here, everything in effect shows the important man. I don't understand this sentence here. Everything in effect shows the important man. Similarly, the affirmation of divine unity is of two sorts. One is the superficial and common affirmation of divine unity, which says, Almighty God is one, He has no partner or like. This universe is His. So Almighty God is one, He has no partner or like. This universe is His. So this is the superficial and common affirmation of divine unity. So it's like a claim, it's a statement, just like the first example he was giving, where it was just said by a statement that, yeah, this thing belongs to one who is somebody rich. No one apart from the rich guy is capable of owning this vast amount of goods. Whereas the other way was by looking and examining each thing and seeing the seal that it can only belong to that rich man. So same way here, I think the one is the superficial and common affirmation is Almighty God is one, He has no partner or like, this universe is His. The second is the true affirmation of divine unity, which through seeing on everything the stamp of His power, the seal of His dominicality, and the inscriptions of His pen, is to open a window directly onto His light from everything and to confirm and believe with almost the certainty of seeing it that everything emerges from the hand of His power, and that in no way has He any partner or assistant in His Godhead, or in His dominicality, or in His sovereignty, and thus to attain to a sort of perpetual awareness, of the divine presence. That was a really long sentence. Let me read that again. The second is the true affirmation of divine unity, which is through seeing on everything the stamp of His power. So one has to see on everything the stamp of His power, the seal of His dominicality, and the inscriptions of His pen is to open a window directly onto His light from everything. To open a window directly onto His light from everything, and to confirm and believe with almost the certainty of seeing it, that everything emerges from the hand of His power, and that in no way has He any partner or assistant in His Godhead, or in His dominicality, or in His sovereignty, and thus to attain to a sort of perpetual awareness of the divine presence. In this word, we shall mention rays demonstrating this pure and elevated true affirmation of divine unity.
Jazakallah khair, Asim. I guess we can stop here for now. Would you like to lead the discussion as well? Okay, I take it as a no. Yusuf, would you like to lead the discussion for us?
I am walking over there.
What did you say? Your voice is coming a little low.
I was asking whether you like to lead the discussion.
Okay.
Because, you wanted?
I mean, we can work on it together. I mean.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So, like, do we start from the verses? I mean, I think he is trying to. The author, I mean, is trying to elaborate based on what he understands from those verses that, which point to that the necessary existence and unity of God as he sees is going to support, like he's trying to elaborate on these verses. Like, these are very powerful verses, all of them. God is the creator of all things, and he is the guardian and disposer of all affairs. So these are all statements that need confirmation, right? To him belongs the keys of the heavens and the earth. So glory to him in whose hands is the sovereignty of all things, and to him will you all be brought back. Yeah. Yeah, we really live with this kind of understanding? Like, do we see that we should be glorifying him, that everything that we see, observe is in his hands or in his sovereignty, and to him we will all be brought back. So, and then there is not a thing but his sources and treasures inexhaustible are with us, but we only send down thereof in due and ascertainable measures. So this touches upon the divine determining aspect of things, that there is not a thing but his treasures are known, are within the absolute knowledge, and everything is given, provided according to proper measurements. So there is not a moving creature, but he has grasp of its forelock. So whatever motion, action, change that we observe is all under his command, the one who has given this order, this universe existence. Verily, it is my sustainer that is on a straight path. Yeah, that one needs, maybe somebody can explain how that could be understood. But that's the verses. I mean, Brikan, if you want to discuss any of that, or you want to go straight to the text of the first flash.
I mean, since you are the moderator, I can only suggest, and I guess we can discuss the verses a little bit. You said there are a lot of details here that needs to be understood. Like my initial comment on that, we always say that the Quran is, like, I guess the main message of the Quran is the divine unity. And here the author nicely shows us that wherever you look in the Quran, you will see a sign of divine unity. And the verses, even the order of these verses are really nice. Like they nicely fill any gap that we may have in our understanding of the divine unity. Meaning, I guess it will be clearer when we come to the example the author gives, but the verses tells us that everything in your life, with no exception, but everything needs to be attributed to your sustainer, goes to your sustainer. It starts with saying God is the creator of all things, so every existence goes to him. And he is the guardian and disposer of all affairs. So whatever relationship you see between things, it also goes to him. So you cannot, for instance, claim that I love my wife or I love my child. The affairs between you and your mother, you and your wife, you and your child goes to him. He is the guardian and disposer of all these affairs. Or one object, like it pushes the another object, we call it as momentum or magnetism. Right? Or the one object pulls the another object, we call it gravity. And in this verse, the Creator says, it doesn't matter what names you give them. They all belong to me. So it's me moving all the leaves falling down. It's not the gravity which pulls them down. And then he says, to him belong the keys of the heavens and the earth. So as you wander within the universe, within the earth or the heavens, as you reach some conclusions, as you have some understanding and reach the heavens, please realms, the understanding that you have is also coming from him. He has the keys. He opens the door. Otherwise, you cannot travel from one point to another point. You cannot make any conclusions about anything. He has the keys. So glory to him in whose hands is the sovereignty of all things, and to him will you be all brought back. So like the past and the future of everything also goes to him. The control without any limit. And there is not a thing but its sources and treasures inexhaustible are with us, but we only send down thereof in due and ascertainable measures. I guess this goes to what Abdurrahman was telling us with the retreat about the divine determining, everything being determined, being measured. So whatever measurements, whatever order we see in the universe goes to him. We only send down thereof in due and ascertainable measures. There is not a moving creature, but he has grasp of its forelock. So there is no such thing as, Abdurrahman was created and then he takes over the rest. He can live by himself, he can walk by himself. But every single moment, there is one who pulls down, he holds from his foreleg so that he can stand. Abdurrahman can stand. Without this hand, he cannot even stand. So the name Qayyum, right? Verily, it is my sustainer that is on a straight path. In another translation I was looking at, it was translated as verily, the path to my sustainer is straight. So this made more sense to me. Like this is my personal choices, of course. But what I understand from that is from the creation to the creator, there's a straight path. You don't have any intermediaries. You don't have any bending of the path, but everything goes straight to the creator. So the path to creator is straight. I don't know if there's any other understanding of this last part. This is what I understood. But yeah, these are my ideas about the verses. So thank you, Hassan.
Thank you. Anybody else who wants to share their understanding? So let's go to the first flash then. So again, he's in this flash. The author is trying to see how one can affirm divine unity, and he categorizes it into two kinds of affirmation. And he gives an example of, there are goods of a rich man arise in a market, and then it is told, or the statement is made, no one apart from this rich man is capable of owning this vast amount of goods. So that's the statement. And so I'm not exactly clear on how this example is fitting with the superficial and how this becomes an affirmation. Because it's a statement, but I guess it doesn't hold any much value. So, and then he puts the example of if a common man takes, is supervising all those goods, then it's not the ownership or the way all the goods are taken by the people no longer values that they're owned by the rich man. So anybody can claim maybe a portion of it, part of it. So it's not the affirmation that a true affirmation, I would say. It's a very weak affirmation. just to see that, you know, that this goods belong to a rich man, or it's just like, for example, claiming that yes, this universe has a creator, and that's something that's easy, but you know, affirming really by feeling it, by in using your daily life and routine, and with your experience, affirming that is a different kind of affirmation versus just maybe partially having that awareness. And if somebody said, yeah, I know that the universe is made by God, and then I continue doing my things, yeah, like the example of standing up, for example, that Rakan was talking about, any, you know, this action of speaking, everything we think that it's ours, or it's no longer, those actions are no longer used to affirm the unity, absoluteness of the creator. And there's a comment by Aisha Noor and Khadija Beza, inference versus direct experience. Yeah, so that's how I see it, like based on, or just superficial claims, right? Like just as maybe statements and not really having any value, or putting it into like one's, you know, experience or in their one's life. So yeah, the actual experience, and then making use of those experiences, as Khadija and Suhail were talking about, to come to that conclusion. Yeah, Berkan, go ahead.
Thank you. So I guess it may, just because you said it was not clear, the example, I guess we can study the example. Yusuf, would you like to explain us the example? Because I remember you explained it once in another occasion, and I really enjoyed it.
I might have forgotten to. I don't know how I explained it this way.
Okay, so the way I understand the example was, this would be my understanding, not Yusuf's beautiful understanding, so all blame goes to me. If somebody put some, like a lot of the products on a, what is that, marketplace? Yes. A marketplace, and then somebody comes and look at the products, all these products, and he says, you know, there's only one person who has enough wealth to have such products all together. So it must be, all these things must be belong to Abdurrahman, because he just had a new job, so he's the wealthiest guy among us. Alhamdulillah. So it must be him, right? All these things belongs to him. So this is, I guess, the affirmation or attributing all these products to Abdurrahman as a whole. Like you look at the whole universe, for instance, and you say that, yeah, I cannot create all these universe, and there must be a God who creates the entire universe. But then somebody comes, Osman comes, and say that, oh, do you know what, this lamp, this beautiful lamp, the part of the product, it doesn't belong to Abdurrahman, it belongs to me. And you say, okay, it makes sense, it's just a lamp, right? Osman, although he's a poor guy, he might have enough wealth to have the lamp. Another one comes, Aisha comes and says, oh, do you know what, this tray, beautiful tray with some inscription, it belongs to me. And you say, okay, do you know what, it's just a tray, probably it's true, since she's claiming it belongs to her. And then, of course, I see the opportunity. I just go there. I say, oh, do you know what, this beautiful desk? It belongs to me, and so on and so forth. Like you give away all these tiny things to other people, and because all the other individuals like claim only a part of it, you don't see any harm on that, because they don't they claim an ownership of the entire universe or entire set of products. But it's as of just, the force between one mass and another mass, it goes to gravity. There's nothing wrong with this. It's just, how they interact. Another one comes and says, oh, these colors, it's coming from sun because of reflection of so on. You say, okay, it makes sense. It's just a tiny part. But still everything created by God. But this everything part, step by step, gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then at the end, you have only one tiny thing left in the marketplace, or maybe not. And this is what belongs to this wealthy guy, the Abdurrahman. The same way in the universe, we give away everything to other sources, other causes. And then we just left with the Big Bang. What happened at the very beginning, we say, okay, you know what, it goes to God for now. Until, a further notice from scientists, once they claim that, they found another equation which can claim ownership of part of the Big Bang, it goes to God. So this is what I understood from the first. It's like, you look at the Quran, you say, yeah, of course, there must be a creator, and that's all. And the second one, again, same products, and I look at the products not as just as a whole, but every individual product, the beautiful lamp, the inscribed tray, and that desk, I see a stamp of Abdurrahman. Like the Abdurrahman's signature is there in the lamp, in the tray. So when Osman comes and tell me that, oh, this lamp belongs to me, I just show him, don't you see the signature? It belongs to Abdurrahman. So he cannot steal, or Ajay cannot steal the beautiful tray. So everything stays there and belongs to real owner, Abdurrahman. And coming back to the universe, when I look at the universe, I don't only say it because of just overwhelming power that I see in the universe, and I say that, oh yeah, there must be a creator. But every tiny, minute things, as we studied in the first station, I see a signature, a sign, a stamp of the creator with every tiny instance. So this is the difference as I understand. So if you don't mind, I will continue reading the comment from Hatice Beyza or Risale-i Nur, which says, first one still has some value, though right. Oh, that's the question. Is the first one has any value? And then BC, probably because there is still an affirmation involved, just at a different level. So there was about the first part. Is there anyone who wants to say anything like the first part? I mean, inference versus direct experience. Any comments with this?
I was checking the dictionary definition of inference.
Okay.
It says the act or process of reaching a conclusion about something from known facts or evidence. So it looks like it's something a little bit solid because it's a conclusion based on some facts or evidence. So there shouldn't be any issue with that. But the first type, as being explained in here, I don't know if there's another description, by the way, because Aisha might know it much better than I do. In here, the first type is as if it's very superficial. The problem with the first type that's being described in here is it is very superficial. So it's not really basing itself on a in-depth analysis that is required. This is the problem with the first.
So is anybody answering that question from Aisha Nur and Khadija Beyza? First one still has some value in terms of like the example how Burkan was explaining it, where Abdurrahman being the rich guy with everything that is belonging to him in the market, and people started claiming little by little things, but that's still the claim or at least the way I, the example, the way I understood it also was like not holding to that claim that, if the statement was no one apart from him is capable of owning this vast amount of goods, that still leads the way that there may be somebody else who is capable. Whereas the more definite statement is everything belongs to that person. Everything. There's no like maybe this belongs to somebody else or this belongs to someone else, but everything, whatever you see, a particle or whatever goods that you're seeing, everything, there's no exception. The first statement still allows for some exception. It seems like no one apart from him is capable of owning. Maybe I'm reading it a little too much into it, but Faria, go ahead.
So I'm thinking of an analogy. Let's take a big school. We have different kind of students in there. So the students know that everything in the school belongs to the school or the school administrator. Classroom, labs, equipment, everything that you have, all amenities, right? Everything that that's available within the school belongs to the school administrator. Every student knows that. Property, this is not mine, right? So the conclusion, the one we mostly talk about, yes, the universe must have a creator. That's general. Everyone easily comes to that conclusion. So every student within that school can easily come to that conclusion that everything in the school must belong to the administrator. Now, there is one thing concluding such. There's another thing to experiencing or actually reading the meaning side of things. So while interacting with the objects or the tools, you may say, yeah, I know, just like using the lab, it belongs to school, everything belongs to school, but whatever I'm doing within it, the relationship that is being taken place, you may think that it's belonging to, I guess the notion of administrator may just evacuate suddenly. So going back to the example of even utilizing, let's take the universe. Yeah, I know this flower must have an owner, but now I'm utilizing that flower, I don't know, for whatever purposes. Let's say I'm making perfume out of it. But within this interaction, the relationship, I kind of lose the notion of, or I'm not reading the flower to get meaning from it. So I'm not reading creation, pointing to its creator. Yes, I know everything must have an owner, but when I'm interacting with the objects within this school of the universe, I lose track of that everything, little interaction, the qualities manifested, whatever I'm interacting with, actually belongs to not the objects or the created things, but it belongs to its maker. So just in the second sort, when the author is mentioning, like elaborating the signature, right? Like the seal, stamp, and so on and so forth, right? So it's all about reading the meaningful aspect of it or the qualities that one interacts with, as opposed to, yes, I know this object must have a maker, and here I go, put it in my bag, and it's mine, or that's about it. Yeah, just wanted to share that analogy. I'm not sure if I was able to express it out, but that's that.
Thank you. That was really good. The school analogy. So now what I understand is, like most of us, we know that this universe has a maker, right? So, but then it's mostly what kind of affirmation we are doing, like what kind of attitude we take with the affirmation about the unity and absoluteness of the Creator. So there is one kind of affirmation is this, as Faria was describing, that the students know that the whole building and everything within it is the property of the school, but then in the lab they may be doing some things and thinking that they are the ones, they are able to make or bring whatever materials or chemicals, whatever the experiments that they're doing. So that's it's an affirmation, but it's one way of one can do it, but it's a kind of a weak affirmation, because although the general awareness is there that everything is the property of the school, but when you're living by it, it doesn't really come into play. Whereas the other affirmation is really seeing that everything is the property of the school, in Faria's example. So the lab and every material, chemical inside that particular lab, whatever the results in that lab, everything is the property of the school. So that clarifies it. Philly Crowd, please go ahead.
For this first part, he's mentioning stealing. A lot of steals, much of it may be stolen. For this stealing part, a few days ago I was talking to a Muslim high school student, and she believes that God is one, He has no partner, and everything belongs to Him. But she was asking a nice question. She was saying that, what's the point of doing the prayer, let's say salat, if I am doing it for my parents to see, for example, if I'm not really that much convinced? And as an alternative, she says, feeding the poor is a good enough action. Like, instead of praying to be seen, feeding the poor is good. So, and it sounds very reasonable, because the first part, if you are praying for the sake of your mother, you better not do it, or what's the point of doing it, because it's hypocritical. But then, questioning the second part of it, feeding the poor, is it really a good act? What is your mindset when you do this action? Because it sounded like this high school student is thinking that she has the money, she has the generosity, and or if she's not the doer of this action, let's say somebody else, let's say Birkan abi is feeding the poor. And she says, well, Birkan is a great, generous person, and he's wealthy, and he's a caring person, so he took out the money, went to the poor person. So this stealing part is important in here, because now the property is being stolen from its original source, and then being attributed to Birkan in this case, or the generosity being stolen from the generous one. And now, as if we think that Birkan is somehow, either from his flesh and bones or his own good spirit, whatever, something inherent to Birkan is the source of generosity of Birkan. And this reminds me of an example. My uncle used to be the person in charge for a company, and he was distributing the salary of the workers. So I said, if my uncle goes to this factory, and in our hometown, generally women are working in the factory, so just to make it a little bit of cartoon-like. So he goes to the factory, takes out of money, and just winkles to the girl and gives the money to one girl, to another girl. But as if out of his own goodwill, he is distributing the money to those workers in the company. So, of course, it would be much worse, maybe, if he steals the money and goes to Switzerland and just leaves with those money for himself. But when he distributes the money on behalf of himself, isn't it again stealing from the owner of the company? Because the workers are expecting their due still, even after this guy pays them, they will still expect money from the boss because boss didn't pay them yet. My uncle paid them, apparently out of his goodwill. So there's this stealing going on in there. So I guess in our lives, as he's going to start talking about the first and the second type of tawheed, the oneness. So I do say that I am merciful, I am wealthy, it's my goodwill that I'm doing all these actions. But still, on the other hand, I say, yeah, of course, there must exist a superpower, which is God. So just to put it into some context for myself.
I guess when we take God as superpower, as you said, that we really don't have much need of such a superpower. Like if you believe the existence of the power, if power is there, who needs superpower? And at least the way I see most of the objections about the God or such a, the concept, it stems from this superpower idea. Like, because as like the first guy in the example, we take the sustainer as a superpower, which is just more than the powers that we observe. People, comes with all these arguments about the unfeasibility or illogical nature of this being superpower. So it also opens the window or opens the gates for such objections, I guess. And I'm sure people would very well understand your example without the winkle part as well. So
just to make it
we are a family-friendly environment. So. So yeah, this is all from our side, I guess. Any comments here? No? Okay. Awesome. There is someone here who wants to ask a question if you like, if you allow us.
No, I'm just wondering, I mean, does the possibility that the property or parts of the property can be stolen cast doubt on how genuine the affirmation is? I mean, sure, the degree of affirmation of the second type is definitely different, maybe more comprehensive, or I don't know, just, it's on a different level. But, I mean, just because it does, the first type does leave room for possibility and even likelihood of aspects being stolen, should that still, I mean, it's still a type of affirmation, even if it's a superficial one.
And I guess this is what author says, right? There are two types of affirmation. He doesn't say one is affirmation, the other one is not.
So there's still, I mean, I don't know what me saying the purpose of this is, but there's still some value to it. I mean, it's not, I don't think we can completely disparage it.
What's the question? She said you had a question, but what's the question?
Well, my question turned into a comment or assertion.
So is the question going to be like, is it valueless?
No, I mean, I kind of answered, I don't think it is. It shouldn't be, at least. I mean, right, because that's why he says there are two ways in which one may know they are his. It's still one type of knowing.
My take about this, so like although when we explaining the examples, we all talk about the possibility of being stolen and so on. But I guess this is not the main difference between the two. It's more about, like when you look at all these products in the marketplace, what you see there. I guess this is the difference. In one kind of affirmation, you only see a huge pile of products, which requires big wealth. This is the only quality you observe there. In our life, like I look at the universe, And I'm kind of see, a quality of, I don't know, maybe a power manifested there, a big power, or a big knowledge, but it's as a whole, I see a glimpse of it in the universe. Because I say universe is so vast, right? Nothing other than such a, the all-powerful one could have been created. And this is all I see in the universe. So when I look at my individual actions, or when I look at my friends, when I look at a flower, when I look at an ugly cat, right? I don't see anything to, let's say, to appreciate or anything to be amazed with. Like, I don't see any signature there. That's, I guess, one important difference. With the second part, wherever you look, you see an amazing, unexplainable quality that you have to, you straightly go to the sustainer. And also maybe another difference is with one, with the first one, you still have to take care of everything in your life, in your the daily life. Like you have to take care of your son, you have to take care of your mother, your boss, your work, I don't know. You have to take care of your keyboard when you are writing. Daughter, yeah. Fluffy, newborn daughter. So you have to take care of everything. Because they either belong to you or either belong to your boss. So there is no, how to say, like, relaxation in your life. Like you have to carry everything. Or you have to distribute it to other people's, and then because you have to deal with every other people in your life, again, you have to carry them all. But with the second affirmation, because you see sign of the sustainer in every tiny action, you don't have to carry any burden. You don't have to carry any load. Everywhere you see. Well, please,
there is a difference if you just look at the example part of it. So, in the first part, when he says, no one apart from him is capable of owning this vast amount of goods. So in this type, the person has an idea about him initially. He's knowing the guy, and then says, nobody else can be owning this. So to the extent that I know about this guy, I can say, since I know that he's so wealthy, and since the rest of the people are not that much wealthy, I am saying that it must be him. So independently, I should have some sort of an idea about how wealthy he is. In the second guy, though, he looks at individual things. He doesn't form an idea about the guy independent of the wealth. So he looks at the wealth. Maybe he knows the name of the guy or something about the guy, but he says, okay, this one belongs to him, that one belongs to him. But this is just the example of part of it. So when we apply it to the life, when it's a matter of creator, so everybody knows about God. Even the most atheist knows about God because we have this consciousness. And from inside, everybody has this notion of superpower, something like that. But from culture, something sits on top of it because more or less everybody is born into a idea or concept of God. So it becomes this guy. So we know something, or we think we know something about this entity. Then we say, okay, others are not really capable of doing it. The most likely candidate is this concept out there. So it's being a top-down approach in this sense. So is it totally baseless? In practice, not really, because everybody has this consciousness. From inside you, only they have that if there is an action, there must be a doer. This is the bare minimum, which everybody has. So this is why we cannot make this black and white and say that the first one is trash, the second one is golden standard. Not really. But when it comes to the theoretical example, we can make such a distinction. But when it comes to practical life, when forming the idea of he, is it totally baseless? This is the question. But as long as consciousness is in there, the conscience is in there in every human has, I mean, even if it is tiny, I would say there must exist some sort of a foundation from inside about the definition of he. But again, if it is very weak, this stealing part happens a lot. Because to the extent that I am convinced about he, the first definition is going to make sense. If it is very weak, then it wouldn't work too much.
I guess we are done. And Faraz was raising his hand, Asim, just for you now.
Sounds good for us. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I think most of it is said actually by other people. Just this question of value always, comes to when people say something is valuable, not valuable, or something is sinful, not sinful, or shirk is very bad, or something is very good. I always, try to think about, what do we mean by it? On what criteria are we measuring this? And I think perhaps the most important for me is something that I think Birkan was hinting at in his comments. When things get stolen among the things in the analogy, it means, so practically I lose the connection with that hand of power that I could see that particular thing in my life directly coming from. My breathing right now, my ability to see right now, my talking, my walking, life. It is so easy to take these for granted because we live in a world of causes. I think that's why he goes on to discuss causes. But we live in a world of causes, and it takes, you have to make a choice to call them apparent causes. That comes at the end of some reflection that doesn't just immediately, so because by default, as if we are simply, I'm breathing, so that's why I'm alive, I'm drinking water, so my thirst goes away. So this is how I live, I'm sitting on this chair because I'm able to talk because my tongue moves. I'm able to see because my eye sees. Right now, this product, my eyes seeing that is in my life immediately, there is nothing here, no hand of power that is making this happen right now so that I will feel in the presence of this one and then feel some confidence that he sees because he's making me see, he sees, and that to really feel that he's making everything sees, he is making every vision possible so that, and he must be absolute, so that I feel in the presence right now, so that my worry about losing my vision with age can be addressed, which is, with me. And so on with like small little things in my life, every moment. So I think this distinction actually is very consequential. This is the difference between, I think, repeating the claims that we inherit versus turning everything, the possibility of turning everything into a sacred thing. This is the difference between having a world where there is a religious life and just life. Everything belongs to God, yes, but now I'm at the work and I have to do. And on this note, I'm not sure I completely agree with Birkan about just taking care of things. I think he meant in terms of meaning, because I still, even when I see the hand of power making everything, I still have responsibility. I still have to take care of things. I still have to make that choice. I still have to worry. If there's no food at home, suddenly I worry and I go and get food. But what difference is? Does this bring the presence of a merciful, wise, compassionate maker into my life right now? And am I in the presence of such a one? Or am I not in the presence of such a one? So I think this is therefore, this understanding is a difference between postponing heaven and hell to some future unknown, there must be, there may be, I'll die and we'll see, versus actually starting to witness the truth of these things that people have questions about. Is there heaven? Is there hell? These questions come from where? I think these questions come from this complete state of, I guess, this superficial affirmation or heedlessness, which it turns to very easily, which doesn't see any real joy, doesn't experience any real divine presence in the world. So how can you be really sure of some heaven-like place? Doesn't really experience some real crisis of meaning, and nothing really strikes as just completely void and meaningless, and all this desire for purpose and meaning and love of beauty is just completely going to be ruined. And that absurdity and the pain of that, if somebody doesn't feel that, the lack of divine presence, then they don't have any sense of hell as a reality. And there's a question about, well, we don't know what it is or whether it exists or not. So many things get connected with this way of understanding, whether I experience divine presence or I don't. And what I lose is divine presence in the superficial view. It's not some, to me, doctrinal, or like it's the wrong way to think because it contradicts some other, like it's some intellectual thing. This is, I think, more the value of it will be known to people who find themselves dissatisfied with the first kind of affirmation, who find that saying God, everything belongs to God, hasn't helped me in this of my life. I'm so still, I don't know why this happened. I don't know why that didn't happen. So all of those things are still with me. So what is my truth of this saying that everything belongs to Him? Because when I don't see, I don't particularly care, who the moon belongs to or the sky belongs to, as far as initially. What I care is, what's going to happen to me in my life tomorrow, or what happened, and why are things happening this way. So I think in the second kind of affirmation, you start with really these looking at the things that matter most to you, and you find the one that you can trust, you find the one in the presence of one, because you really, and for this you really have to question the causes, you really have to have this thing where you have to say that, no, can this be doing it? No, it's not. And so therefore, this is coming directly from a source. My breathing right now is being made, so He is life giver. In myself, in my breathing right now, I find the life giver. I'm in His presence right now. So there's no question of, this losing my life, because it's not depending on me. It doesn't depend on my breathing. So anyway, I think the value of it is something that is not immediately perhaps we can be explained, but I think it's something that we should try to experience in our life, that what is my general claim to God owning everything actually bring into my life, other than making me sound very religious? And what is this point of actually seeing everything? Is that because I want to be a more sophisticated believer in Nur, so Nursi gives me a good big check mark that yes, you are not a superficial believer, I am very sophisticated believer. Is that my goal, to be a sophisticated believer or a deep believer? Or is what's more important is the value that I will find is, I found myself in the presence of the divine, which I surely think is better than not being in the presence of the divine. So I think we should bring this question of value to ourselves. And I think I said nothing new, everything was there just for myself. I'm a little sick also, so please forgive me for indulging.
Thank you for us. That was beautiful. So okay, so let's continue with with this example. So in the same way, similarly, the affirmation of divine unity is of two sorts. One is the superficial and common affirmation of divine unity, which says Almighty God is one, He has no partner or like. This universe is His. So again, as the examples, as everybody was speaking, and as Faraz mentioned, also like how, what value do I see in my life, and how do I take, whatever, in terms of whatever I'm doing, taking care of things, and do I see that there is, the stamp or the can I affirm that everything is coming from a divine source and see the unity, which is what the second one is saying is the true affirmation of divine unity, which through seeing on everything the stamp of His power. So at least Nursi is, showing us the way, based on maybe how we are having this affirmation within ourselves. So maybe I'm in the first one right now, I have maybe this common affirmation that He says is superficial, and I need to, work on that and go to the true affirmation, which is like seeing on everything the stamp of His power to the best of whatever my abilities or, the experiences that I'm given, wherever I'm possible, I can do it, So that's what, seeing that I can see the stamp of His power, the seal of His dominicality, and the inscription of His pen. And this continues on, is to open a window directly onto His light. So basically being more aware, more conscious to see that, in order to open that window directly onto the divine unity from everything, and to confirm and believe with almost the certainty of seeing it. So confirm and believe with almost the certainty of seeing it, that everything emerges from the hand of His power. So that does take a lot of, I think, practice, or that does need a lot of development of the human potentiality and quality to live this kind of way where one sees, and confirms with certainty as if seeing it, that seeing that signature that is coming from a single source, from His power, and it has no power associates. So it becomes like a continuous, as he says, perpetual awareness of the divine presence. So this is like the best scenario, the ideal stage, which definitely I don't think I am there yet. I would want to be, that's one thing, but this is the way, like practice it and it becomes a sort of, a habitual awareness of divine presence. So there is a comment for us. So he says, there are some strange verses in the Quran where people are asked, who created everything? And they say God. And then the verses say things like, but then where are you going, etc. Where are you going? Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, that's true. I mean, some of the verses say you believe, but you don't believe. So it's just a superficial claim of believing. There is no, like, it's a reminder for us that, we come back to your senses, use your qualities to, see whatever the things are for the reality of things, see that they are all emanating, coming from, or, belong to the same source, to the same power. That's the affirmation. Yeah, anybody else who wants to comment on this before we move on to the next paragraph? Yes, Philly Crowd, go ahead.
Just one tiny point, like, because you said it's just a claim, like this would be like reiterating what Ashanu said. like, to be honest, I wouldn't call it just a claim. Like with the first type, the author talks about the Almighty God is one, he has no partner or like, this universe is his. I don't think what is being said is just a claim, empty claim, which doesn't have any utility in my life. Yes, this is different than being in his presence, definitely. But again, like, I wouldn't, this is my personal take, like, you don't have to agree, but I wouldn't call it just a claim. Because, like, I see that even having an idea in my life, just, a small idea, conception of, there is someone which is more powerful than myself. Even this idea itself, I guess, helps me, like, it guides me. It gives me a tiny reference point in my life. Even if I'm heedless, I'm trying to attribute everything to myself. I can do this, I can do that. Hatice can do this, Osman can do that. Having this tiny idea that, yeah, but there's someone else who has much more power, who has a power over all of us. Even this idea, I guess, has a merit in it. Like, it gives me a reference point. Again, from my own perspective, this is how I feel in my life.
I guess to the extent that it is based on my conscious decision, right? So
yes.
It's coming, if I'm observing something with my eyes, it would be an observation.
Mm-hmm.
And if I am from my conscience, it comes out that there must be something. It's another sort of affirmation which has a solid foundation. But if it is just that and I'm putting everything on top of that, it's going to collapse. So this is why the example at the beginning is a black and white categorical separation. But when it comes to real life, things are getting mixed up. And when you say there must exist a superpower sort of an idea, it has a foundation in you. So this doesn't really fall into the description of the first type, but it's just in that sense it belongs to the second part. But for the rest of it, then you put a shroud around this tiny thing as if now it's a huge idea or a huge God that you concluded with, and you're trying to explain everything with that, then it's not really carrying that conclusion.
Faraz says something which is related to this. He says, when we look to others, then it is not just a claim. When I look to myself and what helped me versus what didn't help me, it was just a claim. So I agree with this comment, like the first part, but even with the second part, like, what I mean is, even in the moments of heedlessness of myself, like, I try to achieve something and I try to, have the ownership of it. Even when I'm such heedless, having this idea that, yeah, but there is a God, over everything. And as Yusuf said, like, I have this notion, which I really feel, it still helps me. Like, I guess it's different than not having this notion. That I will try to do something, and when I fail, I'm doomed. Because there is no one else whom I can run away with my failure. But when I have this notion of, a God who has everything or who creates everything, just, the first kind, even when I'm heedless, when I try to do something, and when I fail, I still don't feel, completely exhausted because, I go back to this big creator. So, like, I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, but even this first type, like, it has a merit in my life, I think.
So, sorry, yeah, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. What I feel is that you are, because I think you have some sense of your creator now. So you read back, you think back to that claim of just this one big power that when you fail, then at least there is this big power. I think you're reading that content of, because you've recognized who this power is into it. So it's something you can trust, something compassionate and wise. But at that level, I think if you just take away all of that awareness that maybe have come from witnessing in small things the signs of his compassion and wisdom, and when it's just everything belongs to him as a claim, again, there are levels of that claim also. But I'm thinking from my context, where I come from, this big power is the source of big problem, because he's so powerful and he's allowing all of this to happen in the world. He's so powerful, and he's still not doing something for me, such and such. So he's so powerful, everything belongs to him. Can be a positive thing, like you said, that when I fail, I have something. But equally likely, if you don't feel that you can trust someone, and I think actually it makes more sense to not trust something that you don't know, and it is actually less honest to simply, and I see people, they struggle with religion and God, and they have to trust God, they have to trust God. And that having to trust God is such a burden, because religion expects this from them, and they will go to hell if they don't. And so it presents a picture of a person under burden, which is, in my experience, less honest if the person says, there is this big power, and I don't know anything about this big, whoever the owner is. And from what I see this power, my expectations are completely, contradicted. If he's so powerful, does he just do this? Why? Because I'm not giving up everything to him. I haven't seen his mercy. Haven't really no real clue that I really can trust him. So it can, just to make it, I think middle way, I will say that what you say is possible, that you could have still with this claim some meaning in your life. And I think the other is also possible, that this claim can actually be quite a block actually in the way, because you might feel that that's how I felt for many years. I've already done what I had to do. I say everything, God created everything is God. God, there is a God, there is a God. But this God, where is he? This God is missing in my life. Yes, there is God, but and he's missing in the world also, all the things that are happening. Where is this God? Why doesn't he stop this? Why doesn't he do that? So this power can go another way too, where I say, if you are so powerful, why do you do this? Why do you do this? And because I have no real reason to trust his wisdom yet. I think, but when you speak about this God, I have a feeling that you are reading back into that claim. Or it may be possible that some people maybe sometimes experience that way. So I admit, maybe it's a partial, maybe it's a middle, picture. Both are possible. But in my experience, I really felt that was quite a block for me, because I didn't feel until I held on to that I know what it means to actually say, why do I need to investigate? Why do I need to see the stamp on everything? Because this is an intellectual question. It's a paper question. If somebody says, why do I need to see the stamp of the power on every single thing? To me, it means this person has not experienced the meaninglessness or the superficiality of the first claim. Because only when you do that, then you actually find the value in, this was the key. So when you compare the two claims, to me, it's good to call the first one superficial, because it heightens the value of the second one. But when you speak of having, saying that there is a one who made this world versus saying nobody made this world, yeah, surely the first claim is more valuable. The other one is nonsense completely. yet I feel we reduce the value of the second claim and the reason why we should be moved to take it very seriously if we don't, if we want to defend that the first claim is also not really superficial. I think we would miss the point. So maybe we should just keep our eye on the ball here, that compare these two, only to see the value of the second one. We need to be able to see the first one as really not bringing any divine presence into my life. It's a huge loss. And so that we are really moved to see that, inwardly, not because Birkan said or Nursi said that I have to see the stamp of the one in every single thing. It's such a hard thing to do, such a, why can't I just be normal believer, why is this huge every time, people feel this way. I see people talking but I think that misses the point. It's not some intellectual requirement. This is actually what is going to make this God, or your claim that there is a God, actually meaningful, valuable to me. So yeah, I don't want to disagree with you, but I think it could go both ways.
MashaAllah, that was really good. I benefited. So Birkan, you want to continue?
Oh, not me, but Aslan want to say something.
Yeah, the way that I understand Nursi's point here is that there is this understanding of God or religion, whatever you want to call it. It's good, but do not get stuck in that thinking that you know the religion, because there is much more to it, and it is directly related to your practical life, in terms of when he talks about analogies, what the analogy really means, in your when you apply to the reality actually, what it really means to you, and how you can live with that understanding. It's more saying that there is something that you think that you know, and you may have some sort of conviction, and only every individual can judge for himself what's a claim and what's a conviction for himself. But there is much more to it, and almost giving showing a direction, giving a target. There is this up there that you should be seeking for, rather than just kind of busying yourself with the understanding that, oh, alhamdulillah, I am also in the camp of the ones who are saved.
Just to add on to that too, I think the first affirmation becomes problematic when, going back to our presentation, when I think that is a reasonable end to which I can take that. So it's almost like an intellectual conclusion. I see the universe, I see order, I say there must be someone who's doing this. And from my understanding, the Quran doesn't even really try to show you that God exists. It's self-evident. But rather, in the second affirmation, it's more about experiencing that. It's more about not just on an intellectual level, but also one-on-one with every single experience that I have. So, in relation to what Brother Furqan and Faraz were both referring to, if I don't feel that sense of loss or that despair or misery in my experiences, with the first view, I know that there is one who must have created everything, but it doesn't solve my existential issues on a day-to-day basis. It's kind of like God is independent of my experiences now. And so that becomes a dilemma for me. Whereas in the second one, there's this one-on-one relationship that I share. So I was thinking of for example, a very maybe simple example, I see a supermarket, and I know that someone must be the owner of the supermarket. There must be someone who must have decided it should be there with these particular things. So I just remember something else. And then, but with the second one, when I go inside, it's such a supermarket that every aisle is exactly what I need, specifically for me, and designed in such a way that looks exactly to my needs. I become aware of this, and I recognize that these items cannot belong to the cashier or to somebody else there. So that's one thing. Just one other thing that came to my mind, which I wanted to also share, was the notion of stealing, right? So if there is something to be stolen, that means that at every moment I am, or with everything that I experience, that I am giving it to someone or something. So in the first case, when I say, okay, the supermarket must belong to someone, but there are many things within the supermarket that I'm not even taking into consideration and attributing it to the owner as well. Whereas with the second one, when I see the aisle specifically made for me with exactly what I need, I say, oh yeah, I'm out of detergent, so this is for me, or whatever it is. So it looks to my needs one-on-one. So I think maybe in one way we can say the first one is more like a general overview, whereas the second one is very particular. And the first one looks to the second one. It becomes problematic when I say the first one is all there is to it, and I don't go any further. I say, okay, God exists, and I'm going to go to paradise if I just believe that, so all is well.
First one is just the first step, so just don't stay there.
Osman, were you saying something? I didn't get that.
Yeah, I was just saying that, like, do not be content with this, like, the first step, and just think that, like, that is it, that is the end of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's what, like, the point for us was making also, from what I understood. Like that first, this first affirmation, one has to really realize that, one has to experience it. And as far as making the point that we live in this, causal relationships, cause and effect. Although I realize, the universe is made by God, but then I say, because of this thing happened. This happens. This is how we are usually living our lives. So then that allows me to revise my, this affirmation that I say, Almighty God is one, He has no partner, and the universe is His. So I go back and see, is this affirmation that I have good enough? But I have to realize that, I have been, that something is wrong with my attributing to something and, to some other being in the universe. And I say that this is happening because of such and such thing. So one has to experience that, realize that, and then build on that to start seeing that everything is coming, like really using their consciousness, as Yusuf was saying, and basically all the qualities. But it's necessary to go through that realization that, really, reevaluate the, as Khadija was saying, the day-to-day activities. Okay, Muhammad Said, please go ahead.
My understanding of this section is, I think maybe the Quran is inviting its reader to be content. I'm gonna use the word that Osman used, and like it's not really, or the Nursi is not really trying to judge someone, but I think it's a matter of being content or not. So it's I think I am being invited to connect the things or my experiences to something that I will feel content. Otherwise, I am not gonna feel it's my reality too. It's if I am disconnected, or let's say if I whenever I find myself living for the things themselves and by the things themselves, I find myself automatically not content. So in that sense, these verses, alongside with the with how Nursi is approaching it by using that example, or basically putting in, separating them, not separating them, maybe categorizing it into two. It's actually the reality of me as a person who knows some kind of information of the scripture, And because of that, which makes sense in general, yes, there must be a creator, but is it really, does it really make me content, that information by itself? I think the Quran says, go further. If you want to be more content, you have to take everything seriously, and you don't have to be anything but human being to feel, to ask more content, if you like, to ask more meaning. That is, just being human being necessitates me to ask for more meaning and experiencing content in every moment. That's what I want. And I think the Quran is telling me that, yes, I know that you want that, and this is the way to do it. If you don't really ask or contemplate on each experience, you will not get it.
Yeah, thank you about the contentment and satisfaction. That's a very good point, as far as I was saying. Yeah, Philly Crowd, go ahead, please.
Who's going first?
Okay, just very quickly, just going back to the supermarket example. There is value in the first affirmation, because without that, then I would see the supermarket, but I wouldn't recognize that it's a supermarket. So when I go inside, I would be like, oh, cool, look at all this stuff. And I would just start taking it and then heading out. And then I would get in trouble. So in that first perspective, I am bound to get in trouble, whether or not I recognize, no matter what happens, if I don't recognize the owner. Whereas in the second one, I recognize that it's a supermarket, that somebody must be giving things to me. But when I go inside, I think I am the one in control, that I am the one choosing what I need, right? So I need this, or I don't need this, or what is the best way to go around it. And it can be overwhelming, because then I think I'm in control, and I feel this burden of having to choose what is best for me. And in the last one, if I am able to make that connection, or in the second affirmation, then everything is just being given to me. It's like, this is what you need, 100%, here you go. And if you say, where's the supermarket? Then it's our existence, like our experience with the universe, that is the supermarket. But it's about how am I entering the supermarket that determines my level of affirmation.
I was going to highlight again what Faraz said, because I was thinking about why Ayşenur is asking that question, or comment-like question, because it's a general thing that we always do. So is it really this superficial affirmation of divinity? Is it valueless? Is it useless? This sort of a question is always there. I'm asking the question, why do I question such a thing in the first place? And I guess there are multiple reasons for that, and I will bring it to what Faraz was saying at the end. So one reason is, I guess, I maybe find myself partially in that category, and I don't want to be tagged as not good enough. Or maybe I find somebody among my loved ones which might be fitting into that category, which I don't want them to be in hellfire, sort of. This is, I guess, again, coming from some sort of a worldview saying that putting this tag takes me into this camp. So, and I don't like this. But another one, which is more worrisome to me, is if I start tagging people like this, I am becoming arrogant. Like, if I'm in the second camp, then I'm good, and other people are bad. And now that, and it's very hard not to fall into this sort of a trap. For example, I say Passat is the best car relative to riding a bike. And I am very much convinced about that. And if somebody comes with saying that, no, Nissan Sentra is better, I would start arguing against, because I say, no, from experience, I know that Passat is the best. And I will talk about how the seats of Passat are warming up, this and that, and the AC is perfect, whatever. And then the competition starts in there. There is something inherently wrong with my perception of Passat being good inherently in itself. I mean, instead of questioning what am I doing in the first place, I start immediately arguing against which one is better. And I'm losing the whole point. And when I do the same in here, is belief in the first category is good, second category is good, as if I'm looking for some sort of an inherent value that this belief adds to me meaning my ego, and now I'm making it as a cause to be arrogant towards somebody else. I say that all of those guys out there, they know nothing. Or, I mean, it becomes this sort of a competition, which means that I'm missing a whole point in there. So this is another type of why I'm raising this question of value. But then Faraz's comment in there saying that, does it work for me? I guess the value is whatever I have in terms of affirmation of divine unity, does it work for me? Is it useful for me? This should be my measure of value. Does it work for Birkan? I don't know. I mean, I can talk about maybe just theoretically if it is good or bad, but however Birkan is living, with what sort of divine affirmation he is into, it's up to him totally. It's not my business to judge how much he is convinced, how much he is in hell, how much he is in paradise, so much so that I'm going to feel either arrogant about this, or I'm going to put him into hell or paradise, feel pity for him. I guess since I am losing this point, and it is very easy to miss this point. Since I am a human being with an ego, it is very easy to miss the point. So I need to keep reminding myself when I am, let's say, in my perception, thinking about the first type of belief being something lowly and useless for myself. And if I see somebody, to my perception, following such a pattern, am I feeling some sort of a superiority? Like if somebody is driving Nissan Sentra, do I feel like I am better than him? Or I guess this is the really gist of the problem. And it's a legitimate question in this sense.
Can I add something to that? I think a lot of the time, like, it boils down to the fact that how we define ourselves first. Like, because our definition of ourselves, like, will determine how we are going to react to the meaning or the message, whatever we are studying. For example, like, I was in a discussion or in a dars where they were studying the definition of the Quran, and one of the definition is Quran is the trainer of the mankind. I think that was the rough translation of it. And the discussion was revolving around if it is such so, then why is all the corruption in the Muslim world, and why everybody is a thief? That was the question that came up. So we already but the point is no one even bothered to ask the question if that is the definition of the Quran, that it is the trainer of mankind, and it doesn't really, I think it doesn't say Muslims in particular. So have I really gone through any kind of training of the Quran at all? So instead of taking yourself as one of the individuals out of the mankind and ask the question, if Quran is there to train me, whatever the subject that it's going to train me, have I really gone through any kind of training under the message of the guidance of the Quran? We already take it for granted because this is how we define ourselves, right? We define ourselves as such and such, whatever the camps that we are in. And then discussing the subject around that matter, that then why all the corruptions, or all the, why there is more integrity in this culture versus the other culture and all that. So our definition of ourselves defined the context of the discussion where it's going to take place, that in my mind had nothing to do with the actual definition of the Quran and in what context the author was dealing with the subject. So I guess whatever we bring into the context of the text will determine also whatever we are going to take out of it. And that starts with how we are defining ourselves.
Good point. So any comment from the Philly crowd, Aisha Noor, or Khadija, or Abdul Rahman?
I just would like to thank Yusuf and Usman and all others also, but their comments. Said. And I also, as a continuation, although maybe this is not the time, but maybe someday we should also discuss what makes pride bad. What is wrong with pride? Because sometimes, and in general, we should discuss. We should keep reminding ourselves why is something valuable. In what sense am I meaning that, and why is something bad? Why is being egotistical bad, for example? That is again something that we might take for granted. That's of course the case. What do you mean? Like because it's bad because the Quran says it's bad or God says it's bad, but again we should come back to ourselves and really look to our experience and then try to really find out, is it really the case that being egotistical and proud and worried about the salvation of others and worrying about camps and putting myself in some other camp, all of that, how is that something that is bad for me? That I can confirm as a human being how I suffer if I think like that. So that I can actually confirm that really that pride or egotism is not bad because Nursi says or Yusuf says or Quran says. It is something that it is within my, it should be. And we should discuss whether it is really the case that pride is really terrible for me. Why? Not because society doesn't like it. I think that's the big trap that we may fall in. A lot of when we talk about good and bad, we go by what society says. Humility is good, humbleness is good, proud is bad. Charity is good, stinginess is bad. So we take these to be timeless truths of all cultures always said this. But that's not good enough. Why? What makes it bad for me? Aisha, we should try to understand. Particularly it's egotism and pride, I feel the need to really study it and really come to see, is it really something I don't want? Or is it something that I don't want because everyone will say I am arrogant? Or is it something that is really terrible for me and I never want it for myself? It seems something really nice, but really to get to the bottom of it. But that's another subject maybe.
Yeah, that's a good point for us. Thank you. Yeah, like as a consequence of that, one can fall into like without the recognizing or realization. That's what it leads to. Because attributing like the pride comes in, and if we don't question that pride, then we cannot really get to that true affirmation. That's how I understood it. So we have a few minutes left. Is there anybody else who wants to say something? No, so should I continue reading then? A reminder within the first point. So now he's coming to what the reminder within the first point. O heedless worshipper of causes. Causes are a veil. For divine dignity and grandeur require them to be thus. But that which acts and performs matters is the power of the eternally bestowed one. But that which acts and performs matters is the power of the eternally bestowed one. For divine unity and glory require it to be thus. Divine unity and glory requires that the acts and matters is the power of the eternally bestowed one. That which acts and performs matters is the power of the eternally bestowed one. For divine unity and glory requires it to be thus, and necessitates their independence. Divine unity and glory require it to be thus and necessitate their independence. The officials of the pre-eternal monarch are not executives of the sovereignty of dominicality. They are the heralds of his sovereignty and the observers and superintendents of his dominicality. Their purpose is to make known the dignity of power and majesty of dominicality, so that power should not be seen to be associated with base and lowly matters. The officials of the pre-eternal monarch are not executives of the sovereignty of dominicality. So the officials are not executives of the sovereignty of dominicality. They are the heralds of his sovereignty and the observers and superintendents of his dominicality. There's the comment. Yes, Philly Crowd, go ahead.
So I might be reading too much into it, but I just want to ask what you guys are thinking about it. Because generally in the way we approach, or let me just talk about the sentence that raised my interest in it, was, it says, for divine dignity and grandeur require them to be thus. Like the require part, and later he says divine unity and glory require it to be thus. This seems to be a very, starting from a God perspective and then saying it must be this way, like in terms of methodology, which is generally not how we ever approach something. Am I reading too much into it, or is there a reason he wrote it this way?
I guess he uses this just as an addition to your question. He uses this style everywhere, like this is not the first. But he always, like, from a grammatical point of view, he most of the time starts with divine X and say that because of divine X, it is this or that. Again, just from a grammatical point of view, he has this style everywhere. So your question is, I guess, broader than just this sentence.
Right. Others?
Any comments about his question?
He's talking about here in divine determinant, or so not divine dignity. So divine dignity is your conclusion, right?
Right.
So he says this conclusion requires that this should happen like that. I'm trying to look at the original text again. Very quickly.
It's the same way.
Yeah. So İzzet ve azamet öyle ister, tevhid ve celal öyle ister. So these are looking at existence, I arrived to such a conclusion that divine oneness should exist. There must exist, and dignity that I observe. Then I say, okay, this causal relationship as such, as a consequence of this pattern that I observe. Because I do observe causality in there as well, but also by looking at existence, I do observe that the divine is dignified, the divine is one and only. And then I'm trying to explain, why did he put this causality? I'm trying to explain the causality with my conclusions of oneness and divine is dignified. Because how do you know that divine is dignified? Again, based on your conclusion in existence, you say that, because when you look at a human, let's say, how do you know that this person is a dignified person? If this person is a very low person, like everybody spits at his face, and he says, oh, it's raining. He doesn't take it as an insult, somebody's spitting in his face. He says, oh, it's raining. I mean, so you would say that this person is not dignified at all. But if you say that, even if you make a small joke, let's say, for the case of humans, and this person is getting offended, you say that this guy is, we would call it some sort of dignity. So when I look at the existence, do I observe that the source of existence is dignified, or is it like, it is not? So the way I'm reading the text right now is, as I arrive to the conclusion that the source of existence is a dignified one, because I am seeing the traces of this dignity, then now I'm trying to explain, okay, he is dignified, yet he is putting this causality in here. So how do I explain this phenomenon with that? I guess this is, he is not violating his methodology in here. He is not coming up with the idea that, oh, since I'm talking about God, he must be elevated because God is high, God must be dignified. Not based on just a cloud-like idea of a king, but based on the existence, I arrived at this conclusion.
So whenever we talk about like the beauty in, let's say, the creation, or I say, look at me, everything about me is sustained. There's always this idea about what about this person who doesn't have arm? So I guess once you have this sense of order in your life, then you see this person without an arm. You say, after this point, everything was pointing to an order, pointing to a compassionate one, that everything I experienced. So let me try to understand what these armless people also mean within this context. Instead of, oh yeah, you see, I showed you one person without arms, so everything you taught before was baseless. Yeah, rather than that, trying to make sense of it with what you have with you.
سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.